And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch. Heather Lofthouse can't be with us today, but I am just so pleased that our colleague Vishal Shankar, can be with us. Vish, where are you? Where are you actually sitting today?
Yeah, so I am calling in from Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison, Wisconsin, the hardbed of progressivism in America.
And it has been a lovely 2 degrees Fahrenheit this week.
Oof, a little chilly for me.
Oh, well, I'm in New York City where it feels like 2 degrees, but that's compared to California. And Michael Lahanas Calderon, so good that you are here and with us. And you have great fans. A lot of people watching this coffee clutch. They say, Michael, Michael, we want Michael. We want more Michael.
Well, it helps to have a fabulous team that includes folks like Vishal here. So, with that, do you want to get into what we're going to talk about today,
Well,
Bob?
yeah, please, yes. What are the highlights?
Well, we've got a lot to get through. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the news that's in everybody's feeds about Luigi Mangione, United Healthcare. We're going to also cover things that have probably been drowned out of your feeds that we think is still important for you to know about, including the latest on Kroger Albertsons failed merger, the NLRB, updates on the DNC, and of course, the numerous Trump appointees that continue to flood into the news. But
Oh,
yes.
bad news. Well, let's start with Mangione. I don't know how you two feel, but the thing that really amazed me was how he became and is actually right now kind of a folk hero. I mean, this is an alleged cold-blooded murderer, right?
I mean, in my feeds, at least, I don't know if this is true of yours, but it is, there is way more sympathy for this character than I ever would have imagined the mass media or would have been allowed to cover. And I think that in some ways that's exactly the tension we're seeing. The mainstream media has been very reluctant, I think, to address the mass resentment at the healthcare system in general. But I mean, Bob, really, we're here to ask you about this. How do you feel?
Moi? You want to ask me?
Well, I
You're
think
the one. Wait a minute. You guys are the ones who use the term feeds when you're talking about news. I mean, I'm old enough. I talk about the newspaper or above the fold or things like that. Uh, Look, I can't explain why he is becoming a folk hero, except that people hate the healthcare bureaucracies and the private healthcare systems. Everybody has been I think everybody I know has been hung out to dry by insurers who say, we can't help you, or we're going to delay it, or confusion, or bureaucracy. And then there is also the what might be called the Patty Hearst factor. That is, you have somebody who is not low income, who is actually somebody who looks, pretty attractive, and who is high income and is kind of privileged. And here is a high income, privileged, good looking man young man who has done a terrible deed. And so people, could he be a folk hero? Well, I suppose so.
yeah, and I mean, I think to some degree, it's a representation. I mean, these are all representations, right? All of the figures in this story are representations of bigger problems within the system and a sense of powerlessness that people feel. Wouldn't you say?
Fish, what do you think?
Well, I mean, there have been so many reactions to this story, and I felt two that really captured all the complexities of what's going on and speak to what a lot of people are feeling. Came from Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez this week. Reading from Bernie's quote, "It goes without saying that the murder of this gentleman is outrageous and unacceptable. But I think what the outpouring of anger at the healthcare industry tells us is that millions of people understand that healthcare is a human right, and you cannot have people in the insurance industry rejecting needed healthcare for people while they make billions of dollars in profits." A similar quote from AOC. "Of course, we don't want to see the chaos that vigilantism presents. We also don't want to see the extreme suffering that millions of Americans confront when your life changes overnight from a horrific diagnosis and people are led to some of the worst, not just health events, but the worst financial events of their and their families' lives. I think for people who are surprised, it's a wake up call for how much of this exists in our society."
Well, it's a wake up call, but it's interesting to me if if the United Health CEO had been assassinated by some kid on the street, especially a young person of color.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that it would be an excuse for all of this anger at the healthcare system to emerge. Do you?
I mean, I think that, as you said before, the fact that he comes from a privileged background to some degree, and I mean, phenotypically just looks like he does, is it changes the narrative for a lot of people. And I think that we're just going to have to continue to see how this plays out. But clearly, it's on the minds of millions.
Yeah, I mean, it just underscores the system that would prevent the most needless death and suffering is one where we don't treat healthcare like a for profit commodity and we can exploit people's lives, but it's one where we recognize it as a human right.
A human right. Well, that's critical. I mean, this country's spending almost 20% of the entire gross domestic product on healthcare. We have the worst healthcare outcomes still of any advanced country that is spending a fraction of what we are spending on healthcare. And it's outrageous. I mean, you've got these healthcare bureaucracies, the private ones, that are making off like bandits. I mean, the CEOs of these companies are making 10, 15, $20 million a year, and other executives. I mean, it just typifies the kind of uh, sickness, and I mean in all ways that has made people so cynical about our system and distrustful of all of the big institutions in our society. And I think leading ultimately to Donald Trump.
Just to offer a small ray of hope in a very, very troubled system, if I may transition us to some news you probably didn't hear about, the FTC won its case to block the Kroger Albertsons merger. How does that
Great.
strike you?
That's
Good news, great news,
that's
amazing news?
it's great news, but the irony is that Lena Khan,
Hmm.
who has been chair of the Federal Trade Commission, I mean her days are numbered. I mean she's basically out. There's a new commission head Trump
Hmm.
has appointed, who will be in February 20th, 21st, assuming that everything goes as planned. He doesn't even have to be confirmed. That gives the Republicans a a majority on the commission. Are we going to see the same kind of aggressive antitrust action we saw under Biden? I doubt it.
Well, that's a good question for you, Vish. I believe you actually have a little bit to tell us about Trump's appointee.
I do, yes. So Trump is slated to replace Lena Khan as chair of the FTC with a man named Andrew Ferguson, who is a current Republican commissioner on the FTC. And just a few highlights of his resume. He is Mitch McConnell's former chief legal advisor,
Oh,
Oof.
fabulous.
Oh.
a corporate lawyer for big corporations navigating merger transactions,
Hmm.
and a clerk for Clarence Thomas.
He got a threefer.
I mean,
But
yeah,
wait a
he
minute.
hit he
But
hit
wait a
all the
minute.
notes there.
Vish, isn't he also kind of against, or he's gone on record as being against big high tech companies? I mean, he wants to break up some of the biggest high tech companies. Isn't
He,
that true?
that it's true to some extent. What's interesting is that Ferguson, he was actually openly campaigning for this job in Trump world. He was circulating a one-page fact sheet that had stated his agenda if he were to be made FTC chair, and it includes quote reversing Lena Khan's anti-business agenda and quote stopping her war on mergers. So I just don't see the kind of good antitrust enforcement that we've seen under Khan continuing under Ferguson, who, quite frankly, strikes me as a corporate.
Oh, absolutely. No, but the one little piece of this, I'm looking for bright silver linings. The one little piece of this that I thought was a silver lining was that Ferguson, like JD Vance, also is very negative and very suspicious toward these gigantic, Google and Facebook, Meta, and the other three or four gigantic high tech agglomerations.
Hmm.
I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I mean, one other ray of hope I would add is that while Lena Khan might be departing the FTC, I think her vision of what antitrust can be is definitely here to stay. I think a lot of judges in the federal judiciary have found her arguments and the arguments of the FTC under her compelling. And I think for anyone who's interested, if anyone who loves facts as much as I do, the American Economic Liberties Project has put out a 15-page fact sheet on all of the wins for consumers, workers, and small businesses under Lena Khan's FTC. So, I mean, definitely go check that out because among, I think, all of Biden's appointees, she is certainly the one who has delivered the most for the
I think
American people.
she is. You make some very, very important points, Vish, and the fact that she has, in effect, educated the federal judiciary about the importance of antitrust is a big, big deal. I mean, I remember when Robert Bork wrote his treatise on antitrust, and everybody in the Reagan administration, and then everybody subsequently assumed that antitrust was a dead letter. It was wrong. It was harming consumers. And so by the time you came even to the Clinton administration, there was almost no antitrust. I mean, Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor at the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department under Biden really have, both of them have revived antitrust.
And it really speaks to the importance of these appointees, right? And the role of the Senate, advise and consent. If I remember correctly, Lena Khan got a pretty solid majority of senators to vote for her. It was something was it in the 70s, Vish? Do you remember something like that?
I don't remember the exact number, but there was a significant bipartisan crossover. I think antitrust is going to be one of these issues that we see going forward is immensely popular with the electorate across party lines and continues to have bipartisan appeal in Congress.
Yes,
But
absolutely. Mike Lee has been a very strong proponent of antitrust, of all people. This is the Utah Republican member of the Senate, senator who has been, so conservative in almost every other area of public policy. Antitrust should not. I mean, it is really a conservative doctrine. I mean, you want to break up these monopolies so that the market works better.
well, I think that brings us back to the hard, cold reality of the Republican Party and accepting nominees who want to help workers and help consumers because da, 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 we had a big vote in the Senate this week. I don't know if either of you heard about this, but there was an NLRB, that's the National Labor Relations Board commissioner, who was up for renomination. And if this person had been nominated, it would have ensured a pro-worker majority on the NLRB for, what was it, 2 more years, Vish? Is that right?
I believe it was, yeah, through at least the first half of the second Trump administration.
And
But
guess who knocked her down? I mean, Manchin and Sinema. I
big
mean,
surprise there.
the two Democrats who actually are closeted Republicans. I mean, and who have actually done more to destroy the Democratic Party as we know it and the Biden administration's goals from the beginning. I mean, they ought to be relegated to the dust heap of Democratic history.
Well, and in fact, that is exactly what's happening is they are on their way out of the Senate, if I remember correctly. And not only that, I heard that our friend, the senator from Arizona, had actually missed several votes in a row, but made a special point of coming back to vote against this particular nominee.
So what do you think, both of you? What do you think is going on? What is her motivation? Why she's on the way out? What is the big deal? Why? Who's paying? Is it a payoff? A corporate payoff? I mean, what's going on?
I think it's key to look at this vote as not the one of the last votes that Manchin and Sinema will ever cast, but one of the first acts of their soon-to-be lobbyist careers. I mean, Bob, I know you have talked before about how Sinema is very, very close to the private equity industry. I remember it came up during the Build Back Better and Inflation Reduction Act when they were looking at closing tax loopholes that benefited that industry.
Private equity, private equity. I'll tell you, wherever the roads head into the darkness of corporate sort of greed, it's private equity leading the way. And I don't want to, question Cinema's integrity, but you may be, you may be right, Vish. I mean, half of the members of the Senate, half of the members of Congress now who retire are retiring into government lobbying jobs that pay, at least 5 to 10 times what they were making when they were in Congress, and maybe let's see what sentiment does.
The revolving door keeps spinning.
Yeah.
The revolving. Well, and on that note, how do we stop it? I mean, I think that we've got a big DNC leadership race coming up. There's a lot of people vying for the top position. There's a lot of talk about how to free the Democratic Party of this corporate influence.
Vish, we talked a little bit about this last week, but you were not on the Coffee Klatch then. Why is this so important? The DNC, I mean, only 460 or some odd people are going to be voting on February 1st for the Democratic National Committee chair. Why should anybody else care?
I think who will become the next DNC chair has a key opportunity to rebuild and rebrand the party and really restore a lot of the credibility that's been lost by the takeover of big money into the party. I mean, I want to highlight this letter from the Congressional Progressive Caucus this week that I think really outlines some good priorities for whoever the next DNC chair is. Cracking down on super PAC spending and dark money and corporate PAC donations in Democratic primaries, prioritizing outreach to young people and the low-income working class base. And
Sounds like a good idea.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And something you've talked about a lot, Bob, maybe 30 plus years at this point, embracing economic populism.
Yes,
I think, Bob, I think you've been talking about that since the original economic populists in the 1890s.
Yes, I have. I started in 1883. But here's the question for both of you. I mean, how the Democratic National Committee, the reason for being now is for being a giant fundraising machine. All right. I mean, for basically going through the list of multimillionaires and billionaires and giant corporations and sucking up as much money from the moneyed interests as possible. How in the world do you expect that this Democratic National Committee is going to be turned around to the point where it actually rejects big money?
I think it's essential that somebody like Rahm Emanuel doesn't become chair. I mean, this is why we're so excited about Ben Wickler's, because he's one of these people who recognizes that the future of the party is in young people. It's in small dollar donors. It's in connecting back with the grassroots and the parts of the country that have felt left behind by the Democrats.
Okay, so here's the question. Looking at the election we've just been through, looking how much money Kamala Harris actually accumulated in a very short amount of time, relative to what looked like a very small amount of money, comparatively speaking, for Donald Trump. Donald Trump obviously prevailed. Does that mean that we don't have to worry about big donations, big money? I mean, that it's possible to do this with small donations?
I think there's still an important role of big money, particularly in Democratic primaries. We saw this past cycle, particularly from the Israel and the crypto lobbies, millions of dollars flood into down ballot primaries, a lot of it from Republican mega donors to be spent against progressive candidates for Congress, progressive incumbents. In New York and Missouri, big money PACs actually succeeded in ousting two of the most progressive members of Congress, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. So I think if there's anything the Democratic Party should be doing, it's telling its candidates and telling the party, this is not an acceptable system. We need to stop corporate PAC donations and dark money contributions to candidates who are running in these primaries.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely essential. I agree. Michael, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I think that I actually want to bring us to the next item on the agenda, because as much as I love talking about how the Democrats need to get rid of big money, which they do, I think we need to bring our focus back to the incoming administration. Did any of you see the Time magazine cover this week?
No, but I heard about it. I mean, this is not only Trump, this is Trump's second time on the cover of Time magazine. I mean, it's not the odd to hear. I don't even think anybody gets Time magazine anymore, do they? Do you know anybody who actually sees the cover?
Maybe in line at the supermarket or, at a gas station or something.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember a time when Time magazine's cover was actually important. But I think the symbolism of it, and obviously Donald Trump loves the idea of being on the Time. I mean, he's relished his time, the one Time magazine cover he did get before.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I see this every year. Is the Time Person of the Year is not an endorsement of somebody's character. It's just whoever was the most newsworthy, for better or worse, in the preceding year. I think in the past it has gone very famously to Adolf Hitler and Henry Kissinger.
The reason I bring it up is not so much the cultural and political influence of Time magazine, but rather who owns Time magazine.
I believe it's Mark Benioff from I think Salesforce.
Salesforce, yes.
I think that it points to a broader trend that we've been seeing in this last week. I mean, over the course of the campaign, but also in the lead up to the incoming administration coming in, of these tech billionaires making inroads to either flattering Trump or, I mean, some might argue a form of bribery, attempting to bribe the incoming administration. Buying Time magazine, not a huge investment perhaps for a tech billionaire, but Bezos and Zuckerberg separately from this also donated $1 million each to Trump's inauguration fund. I mean, this is, chump change for them, but it's making a point, right?
It's a giant. It's the point is they are demeaning themselves. They are supplicants. They are doing whatever they possibly can to be submissive and to tell Trump they will do his bidding. I mean, anybody who thought that the CEO class or the billionaire class or any of the people who have achieved those top rungs in America will be in any way a firewall against Trump, you just forget it. I mean, these people are among the first to want to sell out because they have so much at stake. I mean, look at Bezos. Amazon is really a big deal. Government contracts. There are there's government litigation against Amazon. I mean, Amazon is a gigantic corporation. Bezos didn't even want the his Washington Post, to come out in favor of Kamala Harris. One of the most important things that can happen during the course of the next Trump administration, starting January 20th, is that people see what's actually happening in this country. They see the structure of power for what it is. That all of this wealth at the top, in terms of individuals and big corporations, is being translated into power that is hurting average people.
Wow. You can say that again.
I'll say it. You want me to say it again? I will say it again.
No. But I think that you make a good point. And I think that in addition to this, these attempts at flattery that we're seeing from the billionaires and the multimillionaires outside of the administration, you've got a lot of, I think, what some people are calling, a form of obedience in advance across the board. I mean, did you hear about, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, said that he was going to step down before the incoming administration actually arrived.
And by the way, can I just interrupt you?
Oh, yeah, please.
I mean, Wray has 3 months left in his tenure as FBI director.
Is it 3 months? 3 years.
3 years. I'm sorry, 3 years. And the idea is the whole notion of establishing these 10-year periods of time for our FBI director is to get the FBI directors out of politics. So he's stepping down 3 years before he's supposed to step down because he doesn't want to be fired by Donald Trump. This is another way that kind of anticipatory obedience is completely out of hand and out of control and giving Trump even more power that he already has.
Oh, certainly. And I think that there's a lot to talk about in terms of appointees and changing roles. So I want to jump straight into that. Vish, you actually came with a list for us, I think, of some of the appointees that maybe people haven't heard as much about that you think they should.
I did, yes. And this is going to be my favorite section of the show this week because
no doubt.
I get to say my mantra, which is personnel is policy.
Do you want us to say it all together?
Personnel
is policy.
Policy. Personnel is policy.
It's
yes,
policy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The people who run the federal executive branch and all the departments and the agencies, they have extraordinary amount of power over our day-to-day lives. And I think a lot of people just, don't really know who these people are or what they believe. So let's get into who these people are and what they believe. You guys ready for my list?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hit us with number one. Let's go.
All right.
So we only have 10 minutes per person.
But yeah, I'll get into the list. And shout out real quick to the wonderful watchdog groups that have been doing a lot of research on these people. Accountable.us, Public Citizen, my friends at the Revolving Door Project. But number one on my list is a gentleman named Russell Vought. And this is Trump's pick to lead the Office of Management and Budget, which I think a lot of people don't know a lot about, but it is the office that helps the president prepare his annual budget request for Congress and examines all of the various agency programs to ensure they comply with the president's policies.
Vish, he was OMB director under the first Trump administration, right?
He was, that's correct. So, I mean, out of all of them, we have the clearest idea of what he believes and what he intends to do. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of good stuff in here. So, for example, under Trump 1.0, Vought praised the trickle-down tax cuts that he saw were exploding the deficit. He embraced Trump's scheme to replace career civil servants with political hacks, helped Trump withhold aid to Ukraine, which culminated in his first impeachment, and helped Trump stall the Biden transition after it was clear that Trump had lost the 2020 election.
Okay, you sold me. I'm not going to vote for him. Does he have to be confirmed by the Senate?
Unfortunately, he does, and it doesn't seem like the Senate Republicans are going to put up much resistance or a fight.
No, but what you didn't say is he is the major author of Project 2025.
That's correct, yeah. And on this note, I think two alarming things that hopefully Senate Democrats can highlight during his confirmation hearing is one, Vought has openly called himself a Christian nationalist and sought to infuse this ideology directly into the federal government. And two, he has a 2-decade plus record of supporting huge cuts to the social safety net and key programs like Social Security and Medicare. I mean, actually, under Trump 1.0, he gave the sign off to every Trump budget proposal that included cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
Well, Elon Musk. Let me just say, I know you have a long list, but I want to just point out that Elon Musk and his co-chair of this, who knows what government efficiency actually means. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. But Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk both have said, without much contradiction, that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are on the table. Republicans in the House have also said they are all on the table. So here we have these billionaires, and Musk and Ramaswamy are both billionaires. They are heading up this efficiency commission that is going to be targeting things like Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid, even though they are also trying to get a continuation of the giant tax cut that was passed in 2017 and is kind of and it continues on through 2025. I mean, this is the reverse Robin Hood that we are dealing with here. I mean, people ought to be. I mean, why aren't Democrats screaming about?
Yeah, and just on a personal note, as someone whose parents are nearing, and well, one has just signed up for Medicare and the other is nearing Medicare age, it's astonishing to me that these beloved and important programs have been at the top of the Republicans' chopping block for decades. I mean, practically since the very beginning, right?
Absolutely. I mean, 1935 Social Security, the Republicans accused it of being socialism and want to get rid of it. And as it has become more and more central to the public and the most popular government program, the most successful government program in terms of eradicating or reducing poverty among seniors, this is what they want to do. This is what they want to do. And Medicaid, let me just, while I can talk about this, Medicaid, half of the nation's children are dependent on Medicaid. And yet they are talking about reducing Medicaid or demanding work requirements or having block grants or whatever they're doing. I mean, this is also insane. This is just morally criminal.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, on to the next morally criminal nominee. Vish, hit us.
Yeah, if we want to get deeper into insanity, let's talk about the second person on my list, who is Pam Bondi. Now, this is Trump's pick to replace Matt Gaetz as his attorney general nominee. She's the former attorney general of the state of Florida, probably one of the most right-wing attorneys general the time she served. I think two things to know about her. One, she is a fierce loyalist of Donald Trump. She was a very early backer of his 2016 campaign and was actually one of the lawyers, one of his defense lawyers in his first impeachment trial. And I mean, the ties go back a little bit deeper, too. In 2013, Trump gave one of her PACs a $25,000 campaign donation. And this was awfully suspicious timing because it was reportedly around when the Florida Attorney General's office was considering opening a fraud investigation into Trump University. You guys remember that scam?
I also remember Trump saying in the 2016 primaries, he said, "Well, of course I give big money out because when I call on somebody for their help, they help me because I've given big money out."
Yeah,
And Pam, and
it'll.
Pam Bondi was one of the most explicit uh, beneficiaries of Trump money.
I mean, it'll shock you to learn that after receiving that donation, the Florida Attorney General's office did not open a fraud investigation into
I'm
Trump.
shocked.
The last two I have on here, Billy Long, who's going to be the IRS commissioner. I mean, this is somebody who has called for dismantling the IRS, to repeal all estate taxes, which would benefit the exceptionally wealthy. Even once pressured the IRS to investigate the Humane Society and strip it of tax exempt status because it supported a state ballot initiative to crack down on abusive dog breeders.
This past week, Elon Musk asked his 205 million followers on X what should be done about the IRS and gave them as one option deleting the IRS. And that, not surprisingly, is what most of his followers want to do: delete the IRS.
Yeah, it's a term he's fond of because he's extremely online, far too online.
Yeah, I'll quote our friend Lindsay Owens from Groundwork. Long's nomination marks, quote, open season for tax cheats.
Can I just emphasize here that the tax cheats, the people who are benefiting from a weaker IRS, are the people who have a lot of money, the people who are avoiding the IRS audits, the people who are failing to pay what they owe. I mean, average working people, they either their IRS taxes are withheld from their paychecks, or they don't really owe all that much because they don't earn very much. I mean, we're talking about the people who are at the highest reaches of America. They're the ones who a strong IRS would actually threaten.
All right, Vish, let's keep going.
Last person on my list, and this is an interesting one. This is Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. And I think, Bob, you'll know from serving in the cabinet just how powerful the role of chief of staff is. I mean, this is the president's gatekeeper, essentially. They control access to who gets into the Oval Office, what shows up on the president's desk. And I mean, we have a clear sense of what's going to be going on in the Trump Oval Office because she is a longtime corporate lobbyist. Some of her clients include, this is crazy, a tobacco company that sought to block federal health regulations on candy-flavored cigarettes, which are attractive to children. A foreign news company whose owner has been indicted for money laundering. A waste management company that has resisted removing nuclear waste from its radioactive landfills. I mean, it goes back to what you're saying, Bob. I mean, this is going to be an administration by, of, and for corporate America and the billionaire class.
Trump campaigned, as he did in 2016, as somebody who would be a tribune of the working class. And I hope somehow the Democratic Party and others and the media make it very clear what he's doing and what he will do. And then when he's in power after January 20th, what he does do and what these people are going to do to shaft average working people. I mean, obviously, in the first Trump administration, the word did not get out because the working class thinks he still is a hero. Well, he's not.
Well, on that note, Bob, do you want us to spend a few minutes on your favorite appointees of choice?
Well, if we have time.
We have time, certainly, please.
Well, the only point I wanted to make, Michael, is that a bunch of his appointees. Now, I'm not going to even talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's a separate category. But a bunch of his appointees really have dedicated themselves to rewriting the history of January 6, 2021. That is, they are intent. I mean, this is Pete Hegseth, for example, who Trump has now gone to bat for again to be the defense chief, and is putting a huge pressure on Joni Ernst, bullying her to get to affirm him, confirm him as defense chief. He has portrayed January 6th and the January 6th rioters as patriots. I mean, this is all of this. All of the focus on Hegseth has been about his sexual harassment and his history of sexual harassment, and his being fired from two veterans groups for drunkenness and for apparently mismanagement of money. But his notion that these rioters are patriots, he is the person who will be in charge, or Trump wants to be in charge of the military. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard, who called January 6th and the January 6th hearings, which I think were the best, really marked a high water point for the House of Representatives. She called those hearings a show trial. And then you have Hash Patel, who's moving, Trump wants to be the head of the FBI. He says that the FBI was responsible for January 6th, that FBI agents created January 6th, the riot at the Capitol. And then finally, you've got people like Pete Morocco. Have you heard of Pete Morocco?
That is certainly a lesser-known Trump transition team member. Please tell us.
Okay, Pete Morocco, he's working in the Trump transition. He's actually helping with a lot of personnel decisions in hiring. He and his wife were caught on camera inside the Capitol on January 6th. They are part of the group that were among the rioters. This is amazing, the extent to which Trump is staffing his administration with not just election deniers, but people who are denying the historic fact that we all saw on television of what happened on January 6th, 2021.
And by people who were actually there, it sounds like, which is
astonishing. And we're there.
I mean, I'm perhaps one of the people who will receive a day one pardon from Mr. Trump when he arrives. Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and there are a number. Oh, well, actually, there was one other appointee that you wanted to talk about, wasn't there, Bob?
Well, there's David Weldon and there's Aaron Siri. These are people who are under the radar. They are part of the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. crowd. But Aaron Siri, he was going to be, he's very close to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He was a lawyer for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's probably being pulled out. In fact, he is being pulled in. But he is somebody who actually was against using the polio vaccine. He says the polio vaccine harmed America's children.
Wow. Well, now, Bob, you were there when these inoculations were, first
I was
introduced.
Inoculated. I was one of the first inoculees. I mean, I was, at the age of 6, I lined up, scared to death because of a needle going in my arm. But I knew children in my class, in first grade, who were in iron lungs. I mean, who had been hit by polio, like Mitch McConnell. I mean, this is not an abstraction. The polio vaccine is and has almost eradicated polio from the globe. I mean, can you imagine somebody at a high level in the Trump administration who is actually disparaging the polio vaccine? I mean, what planet are we on?
Well, it's a good question, and I ask myself that more and more often. And I especially ask that of myself when our colleague Vishal here finds clips from the archive, of which we actually have a very interesting one that relates to...
Is this another one of...
This is another one. Where you were guest hosting the Bill O'Reilly show back when they allowed you to do that with somebody who is going to be leading, I believe, the CDC. Is that right, Vish?
Yes, this is Dave Weldon, who at the time was a Republican congressman. And you were interviewing him, Bob, I believe, on a bill he had introduced to ban human cloning, which led to a very memorable
I remember
exchange.
that.
All right, well, let's take a look.
In the X-Files segment tonight, human cloning. Can politicians ban this controversial science from moving into the 21st century?
Well, I think the question you really should be asking is, do you want to be a clone? People run around saying all these potential uses, but who would actually want to be the clone?
Congressman, I just had a question for you. How likely do you think it is that somewhere in the world a human being has already been secretly cloned? I ask you the question because in a recent Fox News poll, 60% of Americans who were polled said they think it is likely that there are already clones among us. And Congressman, I want to thank you.
It's been great to be with you.
Good to see you. Coming next, should President Bartlett crack down on Tony Soprano? Is Chains of Love the weakest link?
Okay, not my finest hour, and not my finest interview. But
honestly, I'm more intrigued to hear your review of The Sopranos after that.
Well, you can go back to the archives. I mean, are there? I mean, he did not answer my question, did he?
Are there clones walking among us? Hard to say. I guess more likely today than before.
In retrospect, probably today, not even among the top 10 craziest things that Fox News viewers might believe.
Well, not only the Fox viewers, but also among Trump's picks for his administration, I would say 10% are cloned.
I would
10%. We're going to cap it at 10. We don't want to go 15.
I would not. No, I'm going to be conservative.
I would, to quote the late great Jedi Master Yoda, begun the Clone War has.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. All
anyway,
right, well.
Listen, we've gone way over time. I want to thank all of you out there for bearing with us. I want to thank Vish and Michael. When I laugh, and others of us laugh about what is happening, it's not laughter as in this is easy and light and funny. No, it's laughter as in, can you believe? And I think to some extent, laughter is the only thing we can possibly do right now. That kind of can you believe laughter. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. And again, Vish, Michael, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you all next week.